I definitely did feel the length. Hey you!
Oh, me?
Remember Batman? Cause they sure as heck don't want us to forget. If you ask me, the idea of yet another grounded, gritty take on the Batman mythos is a little played out, considering it feels like we got the Nolan trilogy and the Joker movie not that long ago. Speaking of played out, don't you find it ridiculous that in the past 10 years we've had 6 different live-action Alfreds, 4 Jim Gordons, and 6 Bruce Waynes? Soon to be 7? A big part of the appeal of Batman to me personally is getting to see a hero with no superpowers having to overcome these larger-than-life, outlandish villains, using just his combat skills and wit. I was really hoping to see a modern live-action solo Batman movie with all the fantastical elements intact. I want to see them tackle some of the more far-out villains that they haven't touched on before, like Man-Bat or Clayface. And I must admit, I'm a little bummed that we may not see that for a while. At the end of the day, how seriously can you take a man that dresses up as a bat to fight bad guys? Only for criminals with automatic weapons to aim at every single armored part of his body except his exposed face. Maybe that's just me wondering what could have been, had Ben Affleck's Batman movie come to fruition. But I do have a lot of faith in Matt Reeves, being a big fan of his work on the modern Planet of the Apes trilogy. And I think he really pulled this movie off. This is arguably even more grounded than Nolan's movies, eschewing some of the more science fiction based gadgets and choosing to hone in on a detective thriller film about a younger, more inexperienced Batman than we're used to, played by Robert Pattinson. This Batman's only had 1.5 years under his belt, so he's still a little rough around the edges, and even a little rash in some of his methods, and even in the way he carries himself. He isn't this unstoppable mountain of peak human physique. There's an element of rawness to how he fights and gets out of tricky situations. And this costume. Man, I really like this costume. I love how the shapes on the cowl call back to its comic book roots and even Adam West's Batman, and how the collar gives this Dark Knight a unique silhouette compared to previous interpretations, while also referencing Gotham by Gaslight. The armor looks very Arkham Origins, calling back to another story about Batman's early years, along with some crude stitching details inspired by Lee Bermejo's Batman art. It's a very unique on-screen Batman like we've never seen before. Interestingly, the duality of the role isn't as prevalent as in some of the past movies. And in a very rare case, we get to see a lot more of Batman than Bruce Wayne. And when we do get to see Bruce Wayne, he's very much a man of a few words. And he's actually quite opposed to using his unmasked persona unless he really needs to.
Bruce Wayne making an actual appearance.
And this brings up a very interesting exploration of the psychology of masks and identities. Not only with Batman, but with Catwoman and the Riddler as well. How Robert Pattinson emotes using just his eyes and lower jaw is astounding, and really reflects the psychological torment that he's going through. There are so many moments when the film is able to tell these really powerful story beats with absolutely no dialogue, letting the visuals and music do all the work. Which is why I was a bit mixed on Bruce's narration.
Hidden in the chaos is the element, waiting to strike like snakes. But I'm there too.
It's a bit of a nitpick considering it only pops up a couple of times during the movie, but I thought the narration spelt things out a bit too much and it was a bit too on the nose. And the movie does absolutely fine without it. This is a very career-defining case for Batman, and when we first get introduced to him, he has a very black and white outlook. And we get to see how both personal discoveries and revelations about the history of Gotham itself change him. We get a very Telltale-inspired deconstruction of the traditionally squeaky clean, esteemed reputation of the Wayne family, which I really wanted to see them pursue much harder than they did, because it's a plot thread that kind of feels like it just comes and goes. I thought it should have been something that really shakes up Batman's world, but it resolves itself way too quickly. Zoe Kravitz's Selina Kyle quickly became my favorite live-action Catwoman since Michelle Pfeiffer. It's also early years for her, so just like Batman, she's also a little wet behind the ears and still finding herself. She's assertive and capable, but impulsive at the same time, and the chemistry with Robert Pattinson's Batman is electric. Their character journeys build on each other in really strong ways, and seeing them grow together was one of the highlights for me. Paul Dano pretty much has the whole emotionally disturbed creep performance down to an art. and his take on the Riddler was really unsettling. I must say that half of his riddles were pretty basic and dampened the detective angle a little bit. There are some clever, satisfying ones though, and I like how the riddles draw you in as an audience member and encourage you to wrap your head around them. My biggest gripe with the riddles is that the movie makes it feel like Batman is only able to figure out the basic riddles, and can't solve the more complex ones without assistance from his partners. And you can see how this can be a bit of a problem in a movie that wants to emphasize the detective/crime solving side of Batman. I understand that this is still early days in his career, but considering we're finally getting a live action Batman story exploring these detective elements to this extent, it would have been great to see his skills develop a bit more throughout the course of the movie. It sometimes felt like the Riddler was giving Batman these simple softball riddles that any 7-year-old who's played Professor Layton could solve. Similar to the Telltale games, this Riddler is an unhinged serial killer who uses these Saw-style death traps that really push the envelope of the Batman's PG-13 rating. This movie has some brutal kills that are way more horrifying left to your imagination, along with some seriously disturbing themes and imagery about political corruption, prostitution, drugs, and both physical and psychological torture. There were times that I was shocked at what they got away with in this. This is by far the darkest Batman movie to date. And I don't mean darkest thematically either. I mean like exploring a cave with a candle dark. The Batman not only feels, but looks dark. Gotham's never had a sunny day for 50 years, is in an almost perpetual state of overbearing rain, and the characters' faces are frequently in shadow, which lends to the David Fincher-esque atmosphere of the film. The only time this style of cinematography works against this movie is during the big Batmobile chase scene. Don't get me wrong, I love this Batmobile. I like the build up to its reveal where it's almost like this creature of the night getting ready to strike. The IMAX showing I went to made me actually feel like I was along for the ride. But the big issue is that the combination of the quick cuts, shaky cam, dim lighting, rain and fog made this car chase a muddy, incomprehensible mess. It's a set piece that really should have been a highlight, but I honestly struggled to follow the action and could not wait for it to be over. Didn't help that there are multiple other vehicles in the scene with blinding headlights to the point that I couldn't keep track of where the Batmobile was. Just like in other Batman stories, Gotham is its own character in and of itself. It's a grim, crime-ridden cesspool where neon signs bathe the city in a sickly glow, and anything could jump out at you from the shadows in between. I was floored by how Gotham City looked in this. From the decrepit Gothic architecture of the Wayne Mansion, European-style cobblestone streets to the incomplete skyscrapers, it's this grungy pastiche of eras that doesn't feel tied to a specific real-world time or geography. Although we do see modern-day technology like smart devices and the internet, it isn't front and center, which I think adds to the timelessness of this movie in the long run. It adds to the uniqueness of this world, and I only find it appropriate that this Gotham seems stuck in the past, considering the themes explored in the movie. In terms of the secondary villains, we get Carmine Falcone, played by John Turturro, who might be a little hard to take seriously if his biggest claim to fame is the man that got peed on by Bumblebee.
Bumblebee.
But I do really respect John Turturro as an actor, especially after seeing him in The Night Of. He's intimidating, he's sleazy, and I thought he did a good job. Penguin looked and sounded fantastic, with Colin Farrell being ridiculously unrecognizable under all those prosthetics. He was great in the role.
Holy God, what are you showing me? Come on!
I liked Andy Serkis as Alfred a lot more than I thought I would. As usual, his motion capture performance is top-notch, and it's just amazing seeing how far the technology has come. The CG Alfred looked incredibly realistic. It was as if he was actually there. And another dynamic I enjoyed was the one between Batman and Lieutenant Gordon. I love Jeffrey Wright in Westworld, and he completely owns the role. And this on-screen Batman-Gordon relationship is one of my favorites that we've seen. They have a history of mutual trust, even though Batman hasn't really earned a place of respect within the GCPD. And seeing them get together to solve the case was just so satisfying. The Batman was a really gripping crime thriller. It'll take a while for me to decide where I'd rank this compared to the previous Batman movies, but I'd say it would be pretty high up. None of the riddles really leave you scratching your head for long, which does stick out in a detective procedural story when you start picking it apart. Not saying that the detective work was shallow by any means. I loved seeing the mystery unfold, and I thought it was a pretty tight web of political intrigue and satisfying twists. At 3 hours, I definitely did feel the length.
Phrasing?
Especially considering there are 2 climaxes.
Hey, phrasing!
Which I would have had more of a problem with if it didn't have some solid hand-to-hand action and massive character-defining moments for Batman and Catwoman. And I gotta mention the jaw-dropping score by Michael Giacchino. You've heard his heart-pounding 4-chord Batman theme played over and over in the trailers, and you'll hear it over and over again in the movie, and it never got old for me. And I also loved the playful Catwoman theme and the Ave Maria motifs used for the Riddler. The Batman ends on a note that really left me excited for what comes next. And man, I'm really hoping they bring in those fantastical elements. Considering Matt Reeves got us to take intelligent talking apes that rule the planet seriously, I think he could easily pull that off. I give the Batman a score of a motion capture CG Alfred.